Okay, we are live.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Planning Council meeting of the Township of Georgian Bay for Wednesday, September 15th, 2021. I'll call this meeting to order at 9:01. In the spirit of reconciliation, we wish to acknowledge the enduring relationship between Indigenous people and the territories they traditionally occupied. We recognize and deeply appreciate the historic connection they have had to this place, the land, the water, the sky, and all that live on, in, and above it. We're grateful for the opportunity to meet here, and we thank all the generations of Indigenous people who have taken care of this place and who continue to care for it. And we want to show our respect. Hundreds of years after the first treaties were signed, they remain relevant today. May they guide our decisions and actions. We commit to learn, to educate, to honor sacred places, and to take action towards real truth and reconciliation. And I think our land acknowledgement is especially important when we initiate our planning council, because much of what we do in planning council is discuss how we take care of our land. And with that, I'd like to ask my fellow councilors if anyone has any declarations of pecuniary interest or conflicts of interest that they believe that they should declare at this time. Seeing none, I will go to our first resolution. Moved by Councillor Rienko, seconded by Councillor Jarvis. Be it resolved that Council adopts the planning agenda of September 15th, 2021 as circulated. Councillor Cooper, you had something? Sorry.
Thank you. Just a quick question for the clerk. Could you tell me, have we had a change to this agenda? Because I think the first agenda I saw, there was a zoning correction request, I thought, and it's no longer there. Has there been a change?
Could you be more specific about a zoning correction?
There was a report showing 3 properties that had natural state portions of their properties that were to be changed to shoreline residential. And I saw it in the first, I think it was the first draft of this agenda. I just wanted to know what happened.
No
Ms.
changes
Gunby.
have been made to this agenda.
Ms. Gunby?
Thank you, Chair. Counselor. I forgot what meeting we were in there for a second.
It's Planning Council. So CEO Gunby, please go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. To Councillor Cooper, I think you're referring to the notice that you received. That's coming to the next meeting.
Okay, so it's not an agenda item I saw. It was a notice about a specific agenda item. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, you received a copy of a public notice that we send out 30 days before the meeting. So the notice that you're referring to is for the October 13th or 12th meeting.
Thank you for clarifying my terrible confusion here. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you,
What?
CEO Gumby. I'm still in September, so
I say, and fortunately, Councillor Cooper, that confusion was cleared up very quickly.
mhm.
I wish we all could say the same. With that, again, moved by Councillor Rienko, seconded by Councillor Jarvis. Be it resolved the council adopts the planning agenda of September 15th, 2021 as circulated. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. All right. Our first item is our clerk's report 2021-16 in regard to closing shore road allowances. Over to the clerk.
Your worship, perhaps you would
Oh,
like to start with
want-
the public meeting script.
You're right. I'm just saying, there's a speech I have to make.
There is,
And everybody's on the edge of their seat just waiting for this speech.
always.
Yes. Well, here we go. This morning, there's a public meeting scheduled for 4 shore road closing applications and 1 road closing application. I will briefly summarize the procedure to be utilized for the meeting. First, the clerk will advise council as to when, how, and to whom the notice of public meeting was circulated for the proposed shore road closings being considered. Next, staff will advise the purpose and effect of the bylaw and provide for any other information that is relevant to the applications, and staff will summarize any correspondence on file. From there, the public will have an opportunity to speak and provide comments to the bylaw being considered. Please be respectful of time and be concise with your comments. All commentators are requested to state their name and address and sign in on the sheet provided, in this case electronically. Council will then have an opportunity to provide comments for clarification. I now declare this meeting to be a public meeting pursuant to the Municipal Act of 2001, Part 25, as amended to deal with the following proposed shore road closing bylaw. SRC 2017-09 for 9362 Go Home Lake Shore, Moore McKibben, and Shore Road Closing 2019-09 for 9344 Go Home Lake Shore, Hearn Payne. R2105 for 64807 River Shore, Rue Dunn. R21-08 for 470 Island 320 Severn River, Bonus. And R21-09 for 2833 Honey Harbor Road, Metherol Family Holdings, Inc. To our clerk.
Notice of the public meeting was published in a newspaper and notice was sent to the abutting neighbors in the close proximity of the property at least 20 days prior to today's meeting.
I'm sure everyone feels better now that we made our little speeches. Now, can I say to our clerk for the first report?
Absolutely. I'm just going to share my screen.
And this is for 2021-16 with regards to Go Home Lake Shore, a couple of applications.
Correct. Do you see the PowerPoint, Your Worship?
Yes, we do. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So the first of the two applications are for the purchase of a shore road allowance and are being presented jointly as they are the neighboring properties as township policies to close the shoreline in front of a property by extending the side lot lines to the high water mark. Firstly, application SRC 17-09 for 9362 Go Home Lake Shore has been requested by the owners Ms. Ellie Moore and Mr. Greg McKibben, who are present today along with their legal counsel, Mr. Cameron Hughes. Secondly, application SRC 19-09 for 9344 Go Home Lake Shore has been requested by the owners, Mr. Terry Hearn and Ms. Lois Payne, who are present today along with their legal counsel, Mr. Mark Cormier. Given the applications, it is important to first review the policy for shore road allowances, which states, generally, the portion of SRA to be closed and conveyed will be determined by straight extensions of existing lot lines. Due to the irregular nature of the shoreline, deviations from straight extensions of existing lot lines may be considered. For example, when the side lot lines of the lots are not perpendicular to the shoreline, and to simply extend them would be to the disadvantage of one and to the advantage of the other. Land must be distributed amongst competing owners on a fair and equitable basis, and a method of dividing the land has been approved. The approved method is to draw a line offshore, roughly parallel to the general line of the shore. Perpendiculars are then drawn from the various lot corners of the imaginary line offshore, as depicted in the attached image, which is shown from Schedule A of the policy. In this circumstance, when the lot line is extended straight, the dock for 9344 is in the line and places the dock in the neighboring SRA at 9362. And per the zoning bylaw, a dock is to have a minimum setback of 5 meters from the projection of a side lot line. The first SRA application was received in 2017 for 9362 Go Home Lake Shore. And at the time it was noted that there was a disagreement between the two neighbors as to where the boundary line of the SRA should be located. In efforts to settle this dispute, no reference plan was submitted to the Land Registry Office for SRC 17-09 at that time, although one had been prepared. In 2019, the second SRA application was received for 9344 Go Home Lake Shore. Although no agreement had been made for the boundary, a reference plan was submitted to the Land Registry Office. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic in 2020, there was a delay in settling these SRA applications. In March of this year, staff met with the applicants, including their legal counsel, in an effort to obtain consensus on the location of the boundary line. Unfortunately, no settlement was made at that time. In June, staff attended on site to view the property, see the disputed area of the boundary, and spoke with both the applicants and the neighbors to the west at 9338 Go Home Lake Shore. At this time, each applicant has submitted a reference plan to the Land Registry Office. Application SRC 17-09 for 9362 Go Home Lakeshore has the extension line near the water's edge, extending 5 meters to the east to accommodate the dock for 9344. Application SRC 19-09 for 9344 Go Home Lakeshore has the extension lines near the water shore, extending 16 meters to the east to accommodate their dock. Given these applications have been ongoing for several years, both parties are seeking resolution to this matter, which has brought us to today's public meeting. 2 letters of correspondence have been received. 1 letter of support was received from Tim and Rachel Tignali, and 1 letter of inquiry, which was responded to from staff from Tim and Jacqueline Nagy. As you can see here, the properties are located within Go Home Lake and a small bay to the south of the lake near the opening of Blue Lagoon. Here you can see the property boundaries along with their 4 neighbors. These 4 properties have not purchased their shore road allowances within the bay. And here you can see the 4 properties again from an aerial view. In this slide, you'll see a portion of the reference plan for SRC 17-09 for 9362 Go Home Lakeshore. The blue line shows the boundary line as extended straight to the water's edge. The orange line is the proposed return for the boundary line to accommodate the dock at 9344, and the green circles show the location of the existing docks for both properties. In this slide, you'll see a portion of the reference plan for SRC 19-09 for 9344 Go Home Lakeshore. Once again, the blue line is the boundary line straight to the water's edge. The orange line is the proposed return, and the green circles depict the dock locations. Here is a comparison view on one reference plan to see where both of the return lines are located. And here is an aerial view. Sorry, I have too many screens going on here right now. Where's my mouse? Nope, there we go. Here you can see the boundary lines for all 3 edges. The one in the middle is obviously the boundary for the line between, and then the 2 abutting neighbors. And here are the proposed extension lines for the shore road allowance closing. So here's the view from the canoe, as I believe that's Councillor Jarvis's favorite term to use from this angle. Once again, the blue line represents approximately where that boundary line, if it was extended straight to the water's edge, would point to. The orange line in the middle is for SRC 17-09, and then the orange line to the left is where it would kind of come out to for SRC 19-09. Here is a view looking inland to the south of the properties, and the blue line is the approximate line that would depict where the boundary is on this property. Standing once again on the boundary line, looking north towards the water's edge, the blue line is the approximate location of the boundary line. And then the 2 arrows indicate where that extension for the shore road allowance would come to. Same view looking south again, just slightly to the west of the boundary. There's the blue line for the boundary line, and then the 2 orange arrows depicting the location of the shore road allowance lines. So in my report, as I'm sure you've all reviewed, there are 4 options that staff have provided to consider. Option A is to approve application SRC 17-09 for 9362 Go Home Lakeshore. Option B is to approve application SRC 19-09 for 9344 Go Home Lakeshore. Option C is to deny both applications, or option D is to provide or propose an alternate boundary location. So once again, option A, this is reference plan SRC 17-09. Option B is reference plan from SRC 19-09. Option C is deny both applications. And option D would be to provide a location somewhere between the 2 proposed lines as a compromise. So in order to review, here you'll see 2 white circles, which is approximately the area of dispute. And the 2 orange lines represent kind of the ends of that area. So the idea would be to find a compromise, which would be to split the difference as indicated with these purple lines here. It is hard to see in one of these pictures, but you can tell there's a bit of a natural slope to the rock that would kind of depict where that optional middle line would go. And here is where that purple line would be shown on a reference plan. So I would like to thank the mayor and members for indulging my much longer than usual Shore Road presentation. And I believe we do have 2 more presentations. If Ms. Amaro could bring in the legal counsel and the applicants for both of these applications.
Thank you very much for that part of the presentation, Ms. Way. I know we got a couple more to come, but appreciate your attempting to take quite a confusing situation and clarify it with colorful lines. I thought it was quite effective. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe we are going to start with the applicant for SRC 17-09 and their legal counsel, Mr. Cameron Hughes, who I did see. There we go. There's a lot of people to bring into this one, so.
Okay, so I think it's appropriate that we hear from the application that was made 4 years ago first, and that would be the Moore McKibben application. And to applicants, do they wish to speak to it or their legal representative?
Good morning. It's Cameron Hughes, agent and counsel for Ellie Moore and Greg McKibben. I plan to speak to the matter when given the opportunity to do so.
Well, I'm about to give that to you, but I'm going to say to both you and anyone else who speaks to this, I'm going to encourage brevity, getting to the point and minimal repetition, because I think there's a lot here and I don't want us to repeat things. So with that, Mr. Hosk, please go ahead.
Thank you. I agree that the presentation by the clerk is extremely helpful. Much of what I was going to review, that presentation went beyond what was in the report presented, and so I'm certainly thankful for that. I think it provides a great depiction of the issue that we have. I will say that the application that has been brought for the acquisition of the original Shore Road allowance is fundamental to my client's future plans with respect to the development of this property. And that's one component that may not have been clear and is incumbent upon me to express. If we look at the way in which the line would be prolongated from the existing property line under the other application brought by Hearn and Payne for 9344 Go Home Lake, what we have is a situation that would cut the line in front of where the development would take place of a replacement or reconstructed structure, cottage there. So there's been some discussion about the fact that Ellie and Greg are not at the property, and frankly the reason why they certainly go and check on the property, and the reason why they haven't been there is because of this outstanding application in order to determine what they can construct, where they can construct it, things like setbacks, building size, building envelope, lot coverage, things like that. This application for the acquisition of the original Shore Road allowance needs to be determined. And so it's important to realize when we look back at the photographs that showed the property lines from the water, that the neighboring property at 9344 Go Home has an already developed shoreline dock structure and access to it. So, as we heard in the report, ultimately, this is about trying to find some, and I think this is the most important point, a fair and equitable way to divide the original Shore Road allowance and prolongate the line. And That's a difficult exercise to do because fair and equitable in many instances is going to impart some degree of subjectivity. And so with the assistance of more than one surveyor, Ms. Moore and Mr. McGibbon reached out to surveyors to obtain what it was that they thought they could import some element of objectivity into this scenario. And the reason why their reference plan sets the line where it does is because it uses an objective factor that everybody can look at as a already considered predetermined acceptable setback from an existing dock. As we saw, and that setback is of course 5 meters. As we saw from a straight line prolongation, it would result in a situation where the original shore road allowance line would extend through the dock of the owners for 9344. And so there needs to be some effort to return the line at some point prior to that, and to use a standard that obviously planning professionals have already turned their mind to, namely a 5 meter setback as being an acceptable one from a neighboring dock. It imports some element of objectivity. In addition to that, you can see from the photographs that we reviewed from the lake that there is this kind of natural distinction between the rocky outcropping and the beach area. As from an optics perspective, it seems quite clear to me that that beach was developed for the owners of 9362, and the shoreline's docking structure is for the use of the owners of 9344. And so I was going to spend a considerable amount more time outlining what the position is of Ms. Moore and Mr. McGibbon. But frankly, I feel like the report that was presented and the lines that were shown provides the members with a great certainty on the different options that we have. And I call on them to consider the application that was brought in 2017 and the efforts, the extensive efforts that were made to ensure that there is some fair and equitable way in which these lands are divided. And of course, I know that we will hear from council for the owners of 9344 go home, and I remain very much open to answering any questions that arise from the presentation of the clerk or my submissions.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate your brevity, and I think it's your perspective is well understood, and I can assure you that as council, we will be asking any questions that we want for further clarification, and so I don't doubt you'll have a chance to speak again. Councilor Cooper, I think we should hear the other side before we get into actual council participation. So if you'll indulge us a little patience. So now we're going to hear from the Hearn Payne side of things, and I see the applicants and I see the representative who will be speaking on behalf of the representative, Mr. Kimmerer. If you
yes, thank you very much, Your Worship, members of council, and thank you very much, Ms. Way, for that very thorough presentation. I trust that every member of the Planning Council today has both my letter dated September 13th and my client's letter, the Hearn Paynes, also dated September 13th. Those letters contain photographs which I think are similar to the view in the canoe to help members of Planning Council understand the importance of the survey presented by my clients in favor of their application for shore road, closing of the shore road allowance. And that is, it takes into account, for example, items, the drainage from the property, the access to the side of their cottage, which is crucial, and indeed, in fact, the historic usage of that property. I'll get to more of that in a minute. I just want to start with what is a fundamental consideration for council today, and that is in the unfortunate event of a conflict between adjoining landowners, as we have today, and that is unfortunate, the township bylaw 2008-12, which, as you well know, governs shoreline road allowance closings, is instrumental here. And what it states, and you may have seen this in my letter, and of course you are likely familiar with the bylaw, but it states when there is a dispute with a neighboring property or properties over the use and or boundary of the road allowance to be closed, council will, it's a mandatory term, will, not may, but will, defer consideration of the application, or in this case, applications, until the dispute with the neighbor or neighbors has been resolved. So in this case, unfortunately, there is a dispute between the two neighboring properties. And as a result of that dispute, under the terms of the township bylaw, council in this case must, and again, it's a mandatory term, and I'm saying that because that's the term in the bylaw, must, in this case, adopt option C, which is to defer or deny both applications. And that is unfortunate, but that is a circumstance where we have today. And again, under the mandatory terms of the bylaw, that is, in my submission, respectful submission, the course planning council must today take. Now, in the alternative, we would request, and again, our position is that both applications unfortunately must fail, but in the alternative, we'd request that planning council accept option B on the basis of fairness, long established use, and the original survey. And as I had noted in my correspondence, in 2017, there were discussions over the shoreline road allowance. And in fact, under the surveyor Rakes, who is commissioned by the Moore McKibbins to produce surveys, he's produced a couple of surveys on this, but in 2007 produced a survey which is exactly the same as the survey my clients have produced in support of their shoreline road allowance closing application. In our respectful submission, what I call in my correspondence, that original survey is fair and equitable. It provides both neighbors with a shoreline road allowance, which allows them to continue that long established use on both properties. It allows my clients the ability to continue the use of the property they have enjoyed. It allows them to access the drainage from their property, which would otherwise now be on the neighboring property. It allows them to access the side of their cottage, which is important for them because, as you saw from the photos, in terms of the grading, it would otherwise be very difficult for them, especially using their ATV, to access the side of their cottage. So in our respectful submission, if there is to be an alternative choice, it is the choice to accept the option that is my client's survey application. That option also provides their neighbors, the Moore McKibbins, with a large stretch of beach. It allows them to continue the use of their property uninterrupted. And in terms of my friend, Mr. Hughes' submission that it interferes with the redevelopment proposal, we are not familiar with any redevelopment proposal, but clearly any decision made by council today, they would have to abide by that in terms of any redevelopment proposal they bring forward. And I don't see any prejudice to them in adopting the lines set out by their own original survey with respect to the shoreline closing. So to reiterate, we're requesting today that unfortunately council deny or defer both applications pursuant to the terms of your bylaw, and the alternative that you accept my client's application and the survey associated therewith, which again mirrors exactly the 2017 survey produced by their neighbors. So those are my submissions. And of course, your worship, members of council, I am here to answer any questions, and my clients who have a long history in Go Home are also here to answer any questions the planning council has of them. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Again, I appreciate your brevity in getting to the point. Wish everybody who delegated to us had the same abilities. but that's a little aside. Are there any members of the public, Ms. Way, that you're aware of that wish to speak to this matter?
I know they had registered. Just let me. There's a very long list of people waiting. So my apologies.
Yeah, I see you have about 16 attendees, so I'll have to see how many of them are relevant to this particular application.
I'm not seeing any of the names for this application in
Okay.
attendance.
I would suggest to any of the attendees watching, if you want to speak to this matter, please let our clerk know. In the meantime, I'm going to turn this over to council. But I'm going to recognize Councillor Cooper initially because he showed the enthusiasm after the first presentation. And then we'll discuss this matter, and I appreciate everyone, the applicants, sticking around to answer any questions as they may arise. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor Kutzier, and I apologize for my enthusiasm.
No need.
I'll try and put some more enthusiasm in my voice, but in any event, I wonder if there maybe, Karen, you could bring some clarity, but I also have a question for council for the Moore McGibbons, and that'll be the first question. Maybe I missed it, but did you indicate in your presentation a preference for your clients? What option, in other words? This is for Mr. Who's?
Sorry. Ms. Way, I think, was the question for Clerk Way?
I have a follow-up question for her.
Oh.
I apologize. I thought you were directing the question to her.
I was being maybe unclear. Sorry about that.
If I could just have a moment of indulgence, I'm going to look at the report that was circulated, and in figure number 5, I query whether Ms. Way is able to screen share figure number 5 from the planning report that was circulated. Or in the alternative, I can do so.
If you have it handy,
I
sorry.
do.
Yeah.
I do.
We can see yours. Sorry, we can see your screen, sir.
Is it only the PDF that you're seeing?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So the proposal is outlined in the report. You can see the different options that are outlined. I think it's a helpful depiction. We can of course see the Hearn property and the McGibbon property. The proposed Hearn line is outlined in dotted red through the McGibbon property. The McGibbon proposed line also corresponds with the recommended lot line, which is depicted in the dotted black. And you can see that dotted black line renders a kind of in-between approach to ensuring that there is a 5-meter setback to the dock for the neighboring property.
So option D.
The report doesn't specifically outline option D as a proposed line, just my presentation did.
Your presentation did. So
yeah, but that image that Mr. Who's is showing does have a middle ground.
It really corresponds, apologies, it really corresponds with, if I might, and Ms. Way can confirm, it's really option A, but that my clients are looking for, but I find it easy to refer to the depiction on the alternative boundary line on figure 5.
Thank you for the clarity. So essentially, it's the sort of in-between line, though. The 5-meter setback is what your clients would like to see, and from the dock, 5-meter, and sort of in between the various lines. Is that correct?
That's correct. There is a line that could go straight through the dock, and then there is a line that's been what I'm going to suggest arbitrarily set to extend to approximately 16 meters of a setback from the dock. And that 5-meter extension would be to import some objective component to what the pre-existing setback is already in the bylaw.
So that's, Mayor, if I could just finish, then I had a second question.
Please go ahead.
And it was really, because there's so many options here, it's a bit daunting, I have to say. So to sort of try and get it all under control in my head. But so just in terms of what we've been looking at here, Clerk Way, could you just confirm for me that the Moore McGibbon property is the one with the beach on the right? Is that correct? And then when we're looking at the screen, we're seeing a left and a right lot, essentially.
Yes, so the right side is the Moore McKibben with the sandy beach, and the left side is the Hearn Payne with the rock and the dock.
Good. So I have it down in my little noggin here, and that's all I was trying to understand, is to make sure that you know, I understand the two, where the two lots are, where the options are that are being preferred by each party. So I have that very clear in my mind, and maybe that helps others too. I don't know. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Councilor Yanko.
Just for clarification for all of us, I'm just trying to determine or narrow down where the concerns are. So the outside lot lines for both properties aren't in dispute,
Correct.
are they not? And also the black dotted line on figure 5 there is not in dispute, except when it gets down towards the water's edge. So basically that little section down by the water is the only area in dispute. The outside lot lines and so on aren't in dispute. The main black line going down the middle is not in dispute. It's just that little area down by the water that's in dispute. That correct?
It's from the start of the Shore Road allowance down to the water's edge, which is in dispute, kind of makes a triangle-ish shape. If I could just share my screen one more time, then maybe I can. Sorry, I just have this. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
It's from this point right here where the Shore Road begins all the way down. So this whole area is in dispute right there. Neither party is disputing the fact that the dock for 9344 should remain with that property. The return line to the shore is at a pin closer to the shore versus the Hearn Payne starting point for the return starts back at the beginning of the Shore Road. But neither property's edge, so all the way up here to where it returns and hits the water, that's not in dispute. We've received correspondence from that neighbor. We've received correspondence from this neighbor about this line, that's not in dispute. And the middle line down the boundary to the Shore Road is not in dispute, but it's as soon as we hit the Shore Road boundary right here to the water's edge, that becomes the disputed area.
Okay, and the last question I have is that the suggested line in between, we call it the blue line,
Yeah.
between the two orange lines, the blue lines, has either of the proponents commented on that that option?
You mean the purple lines?
I guess it was a purple line, the one that
purple.
would be between the, yeah, but one that between the two orange lines. So it would basically cut the two options in half. Is that acceptable to anybody? Or is, it's obviously an option to council, but is that acceptable to anybody? The proponents, either proponent?
The proponents would have to respond to that.
Okay, let's start with the Mr. Host. Is that compromise line been considered by your clients?
I am not sure whether Clerk Way can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the first time I saw that middle line was during
Correct.
her presentation. And so I can say in the modern age of technology, as I'm muted and all of this is transpiring, I have my phone to my right and have sent my clients a text message about the consideration of the purple line. But in any event, the direct answer is no, that line has not been meaningfully considered by the parties at this point.
Fair enough, and we certainly, council would not be able to resolve on that line today anyway, because it would have to be surveyed before we could resolve on it. It doesn't stop council from making a suggestion if they're so inclined. Mr. Kemmerer, I imagine you would have a similar response.
That's correct. It is the first time we've also seen that lot line. And I mean, I appreciate the efforts of staff to find a compromise. My initial thoughts, and I haven't talked to my clients on this, is where I saw the alternative lot line, it still excluded, or some of my clients, if you will, infrastructure from their lot. My client's concern is simply, to be equitable, but not to be also to be put in a position of where they're trespassing on their neighbor's property. And it looked to me, and I may be wrong in that, but that the alternate line would still constitute a trespass in terms of some of the infrastructure, like the drainage and the side access that my clients have. I think it goes, in a sense, to the issue. We'd certainly be happy to discuss it with staff further, but it goes fundamentally to that issue that in a case of an ongoing dispute, and I don't think that can be resolved right now. Otherwise this could drag on all day for you guys. But in the case of an ongoing dispute, council's action under the bylaw is to defer the applications, and that would certainly give time for to discuss or review any alternative. But my initial impression is it still cut off some of my clients' infrastructure, and that would constitute a trespass onto their neighbors, which would be no one's best interests.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Councilor Rienko? All right. Before I go on, and I saw your hand, Councilor Bocek, I understand that there are two members of the public who wish to speak. And I see Ms. Lay has joined us. And so I think we should hear from her. And Ms. Way, there's another member of the public who also may want to speak?
No, sorry, just Ms. Lay.
Okay, Ms. Lay, please go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry I'm late. I just got the baby to settle here.
Okay.
I do want to just take a moment to voice my support for the Hearn and Payne application. They've been wonderful neighbors to us. So we've been able to sort out our lot lines in a very neighborly way with.
Oh, we just lost you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Now we can, yes. The last sentence we missed, I'm afraid.
No worries. We've been able to work out our lot lines in a very neighborly way together. If you look at the opposite side, the side that is not in dispute of the map, you can actually see that we have a significant size boathouse and dock there, and that is significantly right set to our property. So you can actually see at some point there was an understanding between all that neighbor and the bay that those lot lines were to run perpendicular to the water. And you can see, obviously, we set the precedence with our property because we have a significantly right set boathouse. So I think that's one factor that we should also include here, is that there was an understanding that they were perpendicular. So if you review their application, you can see that they've used that property. They've been under the understanding that it is right set with all the neighbors. I'm hoping we can work this out in a neighborly way because we want to close our shore road allowance too. But I do just want to take a moment to voice my support. You know, this is the way the neighbors have always known the property in that bay. So I just want to take a moment to consider our rights at Boathouse as part of this application. That's all. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your input, and I must admit that you've now taken care of one of the questions I was going to ask, is how was that line an agreed to line on the other side of this shore road allowance? So thank you very much for that.
Thanks.
Okay, now we'll go back to council, and Councillor Bocek, I saw your hand.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was just simply I seen on the chat that Rachel wanted to speak and I didn't know that anybody had picked up on it. So thank you.
Okay. Councillor Jarvis.
So what we're asking here is the wisdom of Solomon. I'm not keen on that from many different perspectives, and I'm tending to lean towards Mr. Kemmerer's comments with regards to the bylaw that really states that we should be deferring this until an agreement can be reached. And I don't think it's fair for us to be forcing an agreement on one or both parties. I do have a question for our clerk. There is in fact a bylaw that states in situations like this that we should be deferring. If we make a decision on this lot line and one of the parties is not in agreement with it, then I presume they can take it further and appeal it. Am I correct?
So first, I'd like to clarify, it's a policy, not a bylaw, so it doesn't have the same legal teeth that a bylaw would have. There is no real appeal process. It's council's decision. So if we go with option A, then we can pass bylaws. If we go with option B, we can pass bylaws today. If we go with an alternative line, new surveys would need to be drawn up, and those would be at the cost of the proponents.
Okay,
And then we would have to come back for a subsequent public meeting. But our shore road closing policy doesn't have an appeal process.
Ask maybe a difficult question, and that is, since we have both proponents here, there's a dispute and they've brought it to planning council. Are they prepared, both parties, to accept whatever decision we give them? Mr. Kemmerer.
Mr. Kemmerer.
Thank you. I just have to, with no disrespect to Ms. Way, I just have to clarify that it is not a policy. Bylaw 2008-12, Section 1 states that the road allowance closures policy and procedures attached as Schedule A form part of this bylaw. It is not simply a policy, it is part of the bylaw. And, you know, I don't have instructions to my clients, but certainly any decision council makes today is open to a judicial review on the basis that it does not comply, in my respectful submission, with the bylaw. Well, a schedule is attached to the bylaw, it is an integral part and forms a part of the bylaw as the bylaw itself states. So it is not simply a policy, it is the bylaw. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Douglas.
Thank you. Mr. Camera, I think you mentioned that there was an original survey done by the neighboring property, the Moore McCribbin, that was in line with what your clients were originally thinking. Is that survey indicate something? Do we have that survey? Have we seen that survey?
Thank you, through you, your worship. Councillor Douglas, you do have that survey. It is attached to my correspondence. I can also bring it up on the screen, I hope, if that's of help.
Yeah, that would be helpful if you could just maybe take a look at that. Is that more in line with what the alternative purple line, let's say?
It is exactly the same as my client's application, the same boundary lines.
And that was originally submitted by Moore McCribbin, or I just heard you say.
It was produced as part of their application process. It hasn't been registered to my understanding.
And then they've changed it, or sorry, I didn't understand what.
They've had more recent surveys, both in May and August of 2019, with respect to their application. And I believe the August 2019 one is the one that's attached to the option in the report. But I can bring up the 2017 survey if you'd like.
I guess the question is why that was changed, if they originally had it that way and then it got changed.
To be honest, I'm not sure, but certainly my clients agree with that survey as a which I call what I call in my letter the original survey. That's was at one point, as I understand, acceptable to all parties.
Mr. Host, do you wanted to make a comment?
Yes, if I may, thank you. I can clarify what transpired. Mr. Rakes, the original surveyor, and what is being referred to as the original survey was never deposited. The reference plan was never deposited with the registry office, and my clients were never in agreement with whatever the result of that survey was, despite the fact that they had commissioned it. What transpired was the surveyor attended to the property, and my understanding is that the neighboring parties were present while the surveyor was there and essentially provided some degree of direction. Certainly, whether that is accurate or inaccurate, it was not my client's direction. And what transpired was the line was set, and my clients were completely confused as to why it was set that way. And ultimately, it was through discussions with the municipality and staff there that said this survey doesn't align with the municipal policies vis-a-vis how to prolongate the line, at which point there was they repaid the surveyor to attend, and essentially what happened was the surveyor drew the line straight to the edge of the dock with no setback whatsoever. And that's the survey that was submitted, and it was submitted that way after discussions with staff, and my clients never felt that it was really a fair and equitable division of those lands, because it essentially pinned the one side of the dock. And so ultimately what transpired was they retained the services of another surveyor to opine on the fair and equitable nature of it. The division that happened to be Mr. John Hiley, who prepared a report on what would be fair and equitable. And he opined that the fair and equitable resolution, and my understanding is that the staff were quite supportive of that fair and equitable resolution, and that aligns with the current McGibbon application to set the line with a 5-meter setback, which aligns with the comprehensive zoning bylaw. So that gives some history as to what we're calling the quote unquote original survey.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Kemmer, you a quick response?
Yes, thank you. I have to clarify, my clients were not part of that original survey exercise and certainly had no ability to direct Mr. Rakes in his surveying. Now, I do believe it is correct that that original survey was prepared. My understanding was that it was acceptable to all, but I think Mr. Hoos is correct in stating that town staff said our general policy is that you do the straight line out, and that may have led to the second survey, but certainly my clients had no influence or over the original survey. And again, that original survey is we think equitable. And you also have, as part of my correspondence, the letter report from Chester Stanton on why that is fair and equitable.
Thank you. Who have I not heard from? I haven't heard from Councillor Bocheck or Councillor Hazelton on this matter. Any questions that either of you would like to ask? Councillor Bocheck.
Yeah, I'm seeing a real dilemma here, and like in most cases, things are brought to us where there's a decision made and we approve it or deny it or defer it. And in this case, there's been no consensus on right or wrong, and I would have loved to seen this come with some sort of consensus by the two parties working together, working this out, much like we see if other cases come before us. So I'll wait for the chair to make a decision on which way we're going here, whether we're going to vote or defer, and then I'll make my decision. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Hazelton.
Thank you, Mayor Kutsier. I do find it distressing that the neighbors can't agree. I don't think that we need to be adjudicators of this, and I think the policies are fairly clear. If the neighbors can't agree, that no decision should be made. I would like to offer a comment that I'm surprised the neighbor to the east, 9378, isn't concerned about a perpendicular extension of the shore road allowance, which appears to be, according to Rachel, kind of a neighborly assumption. However, the lot extension is a direct line extension as opposed to perpendicular to shore on the east side of the property. Certainly the amount of shoreline would be dramatically different if it was not extended that way. So I'm sort of leaning towards the 9344 lot and the interests and concerns that they have shared as being important. But having had personal experience with a non-typical lot line extension and need for agreement with the neighbor and finding agreement with the neighbor, I believe that policy is important, and I would certainly take that position going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I have an additional concern, and Councillor Hazelton, you introduced it extremely well, in my sake. You mentioned on the Moore-McKibben application, I'll call it the eastern boundary is an absolute straight line out to the waterfront. And according to the survey that I see that's on page 10 of our reports and labeled option A, that line goes straight through a crib dock of the neighbors. And so I can't help but wonder why there wasn't the bend to at least give 5 meters to the neighbor's crib dock. And so I find myself, regardless of where the western shore road line would go, and we've been given a number of options, I'm concerned on the Moore-McKibben application about the eastern line, because it appears to me it would slice through the crib dock and then take the neighbors to the east and significantly narrow their shore road allowance and perhaps be unfair to the neighbors to the east. So that is a concern of mine, and I find myself, along with a couple of my counselors, quite inclined to defer this. And whether or not the policy is a bylaw or a policy, it's nonetheless a principle that this council follows, which is we don't like to settle disputes between neighbors. We much rather the neighbors work it out between themselves, in fairness to as much as possible to both sides. Visually, I can fully appreciate and understand how the Hearn Payne family would like a little strip of the beach because it's much friendlier for launching kayaks and canoes and what have you. That I fully appreciate. Whether or not, though, that's an attribute that belongs to their property or not is basically in dispute. And much like Ms. Lay said, wouldn't it be nice if all the neighbors could agree on a line that works for everybody and we can have a friendly neighborhood? And I certainly want to encourage that. And council, with your approval, I'm going to recommend deferral. I don't want to just deny. I'd rather defer and give everybody one more chance before we, I'd like to have another look at this with ideally the neighbor to the east also involved so that we can resolve shore road allowances for everybody in the fairest way possible. Everybody's going to have to give something up, but everybody will also gain their shore road allowance, and which will allow then any future planning and property construction that there may be in the future to be consider the property as a whole, including shore road allowance. Council, what do you think? Should we go for deferral? I'm seeing a lot of positives, and so And I don't believe we have to call a vote on deferral, do we, Ms. Way?
No, you
All
do not,
right.
Your Worship.
We are going to defer this. I appreciate the all the presentations. I appreciate the brevity and the clarity of what everybody said. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to a resolution coming in front of us in the next month or two with a compromise that both sides can, let me call it, live with, even if it's not exactly what they wanted.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Council, are we ready to go on to the next report? The next report is Clerk's 2021-17 in regards to 64807 River Shore. When I should say, Ms. Way, as you prepare for that, thank you very much for all your work on this prior one. I know it couldn't have been easy, and I thought your presentation actually made it reasonably clear, which also wasn't easy.
Thank you, Your Worship.
But now I think we're going to, are we passing the next one over to Ms. Amaro?
We certainly are.
Amaro, sorry. Ms. Amaro, whenever you're ready.
You're on mute, Sydney.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Sorry, I apologize. I have a lot of screens open at the moment. Okay, I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can.
So, good morning, Mayor and Council. The next Shore Road application on the agenda today is for application number R2105 for Rug Dunn, located at 64807 River Shore. The Shore Road application has been requested by the applicants to construct a new dock. The Shore Road allowance for Part 1 is 1,510 square meters at a cost of $8 per square meter for a purchase price of $12,080 plus HST. The SRA application was received on April 19th, 2021. The property is zoned shoreline residential type 1. There are no open building permits on file, and we received one letter of support from the neighbor Derek Byers, located at 6488 Georgian Bay Shore. Here's a location map of the subject lands, as well as an aerial view and an overview of the survey. So they're looking to purchase Part 1. I believe the applicants, Amanda Dunn and David Rugg, are present this morning. So if you have any questions for them or myself, please let us know.
Okay, thank you very much. Dare I say, I missed all sorts of colored lines. Are the applicants present, and do they wish to speak, or any members of the public?
I'm just bringing Amanda over now.
And that would be a Ms. Dunn?
That is correct.
Ms. Dunn, do you wish to speak to this matter?
I'm trying to turn up the volume. Hang on a sec here.
We can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Yes, I am here.
Do you have anything you wish to add to this report?
I think that I'm not sure. I haven't had any conversations about this. The shoreline allowance, though, it was briefly spoken to me that we would have to make a slight adjustment over on Derek Byers' side. So that's 6488 because his dock is there, and that particular border would end up right in front of his cottage. this property used to be owned by the same people, both lots. And so when the dock was built, they didn't take into account the original border. So you can see where the borderline comes down to a dock. That's Derek's dock.
Through your worship, we did receive one letter of support from Derek Byers, identifying that he's in agreement of the application. I haven't received any correspondence any further about amending any lines. So this is the first I've heard of this. Like I said, we did receive a letter of support. I did forward that correspondence off to council this morning.
Yes.
But other than that, I've received nothing else.
And I'm afraid I don't see any docks on your overhead or your survey that would fit into what Ms. Dunn is describing.
It's on the survey.
It's on the survey that's attached to the application. I was just under the understanding from the application that, as in the last problem, that these lines would be altered to go to do a straight line down to the water, which would give Derek more shoreline. I mean, I don't know how I did speak to somebody about it, but it was a previous employee that's not with the town anymore. And we did talk about an alteration to the border to take that line straight down to the water rather than ending up in the middle of his access to his dock and in front of his cottage.
I'm sorry.
If you have a look at the border on that goes down to Derek's dock, it also touches the corner of his deck. I don't know. To me, it's fine. And I know that Derek doesn't have any problems with us purchasing the shoreline. It's just my understanding was that according to the town, that they would take it upon themselves to alter that to go straight down to the water. But if we get approval to purchase it with the line that's there, I don't know, what do we do after that? Do we have to go through for a border adjustment?
I think under the circumstances, we'd rather get the border resolved before we approve anything.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sorry, Councilor Wanko, you refer to it's on the survey. I don't see.
Page 27 of your package on the
yes.
on the north border of the property.
Oh, got it. Thank you.
It incorporates.
I have to lean in to see it. Perhaps the best thing we can do then is defer this and get this matter resolved, because I think that Ms. Dunn wants to be perfectly fair to the neighbor, and so I think perhaps deferral would be the best. Councillor Hazelton.
Yeah, just one quick question here. Given dock and lot line setbacks, if the shoreline were purchased in this way, bylaw enforcement might force the neighbor to the north to move his dock to comply with a 5-meter setback, which probably nobody wants. So I think your recommendation is spot on.
Councillor Cooper.
I agree with all that, but I just for Amanda, if you wouldn't mind telling me, when you say a line from to the water's edge that would go straight from where to where, so are you talking about a line that goes from the edge of the back of the shore road allowance down to the water's edge, which would allow this dock to be in the neighbor's property? Is that what you're referring to?
What I'm referring to is there is a post that is very close to the inner border of the shore road allowance. That if we went more perpendicular down to the water's edge, and I mean perpendicular to the shore, then it would, we would basically be bringing that line down and allowing Derek to have the side, the amount of space that he needs to have his dock legally there.
I think
So
that's,
just for clarification, so it's the square that we see that's something like ORPB or something like that?
Yes, that's correct.
And from that line down to the water's edge is what you're suggesting, which would allow for that dock to be in your neighbor's property.
That's correct.
Sounds pretty sensible to me. Thank you.
Councillor Jarvis, followed by Councillor Douglas.
Yeah, it would also allow probably appropriate setback for the deck to the property line, which would be would work for everybody. I appreciate Amanda's input on this, and unlike the previous one, it seems to be very much an understanding that maybe that's the appropriate way to go. So I'm in agreement with the deferral.
Okay, Ms. Douglas. Councillor Douglas.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I was just going to comment on the same thing that Councillor Jarvis did. It sounds like Amanda has no objections to this being, it seems like to me that the neighbors are in agreement to this, and it should be probably sorted out for us to just put it through rather than come back again. So thank you, Amanda, for your input on that, and it's nice to see our neighbors getting along.
So, Council, I think we are in agreement that we'll defer this item. I'm afraid, Ms. Amaro, there'll be a little more work on your part, and probably the surveyor will have to throw another stake in the to outline the line, and then we can probably approve it fairly quickly when it comes back to us. At least I'm optimistic of that. Thank you very much, Ms. Dunn. I applaud your approach.
Thank you for your time.
All right, that has been deferred. And now we will go on to the next application, which is Clerk's Report 2021-18 for 470 Island 320 Severn River. And that once again is Ms. Amaro.
Thank you. So the next application is R21-08 for your bonus located at 470 Island 320 Severn River. The shore road allowance has been requested by the applicants to reconstruct an existing boathouse. The shore road allowance for part 1 is 595.11 square meters at a cost of $8 per square meter for a purchase price of $4,760.88 plus HST. The shore road allowance application was received on May 31st, 2021. The property is zoned shoreline residential type 1. There are no open building permits on file, and we have received no correspondence regarding this application. Here we have a location map of the subject lands, as well as an aerial view. And the survey as well, and I can zoom in on part 1 is what they're purchasing. So their property is part 2 and part 1 is the shore road allowance that they are purchasing. I believe Casey, your bonus is present this morning. If you have any questions for him or myself. Yeah, that's everything. And I will bring
Sorry, I moved him over.
okay, perfect, thank you.
All right. Do you wish to add anything to this presentation? There we go. I'm afraid we didn't hear you. If you're okay with the presentation, give us a thumbs up. All right, so we'll take that as you have nothing to add at this time. And do we know if there are any members of the public who wish to speak to this matter?
I don't believe any members of the public have been registered.
Okay. Council, any questions? Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor Kutz here. And this is for Sydney. I didn't ask this with the last application, but I've requested this information before and just want to understand the practices here with respect to measurement. I realize that the surveyor comes in and gives a measurement when there's a shoreline like this that's so in and out. You get a certain number, but there's also, I thought, a practice of using a straight line versus a very jagged sort of shoreline, and the back line of the shore road allowance would be more straight, shall we say, which we actually see here. So I'm just curious, what are they paying for? Are they including all these little wee ins and outs or not?
Through your worship to Councillor Cooper, I may have to get Karen, Ms. Way to jump in here, but we take our calculations directly off the survey. So if you look at the survey, we identify each part and it identifies the square meters. So that's where we take our purchase price off of. In terms of straight line across, Karen, I don't know if you can comment on that in terms of the surveys.
Certainly. So my apologies, as this isn't a file I've been working on, so I'm not overly familiar with it, but generally I know this one is not a smooth line, but generally that's because of the way the water falls or the slope of the land. And that's why we leave it to the surveyors to survey the land. And we trust our legal counsel and our planning staff to also review this survey. And so sometimes it makes it a little more in and out, so to speak, and all those calculations are done accordingly, not necessarily with a straight line. Did that answer your question, Councillor Cooper?
Thank you very much. And sort of, yes, I think frankly, it's the practice that is used, and I've seen in the past where we actually use a straight line as the measurement for the front on occasion. So maybe we can get our planning staff and maybe it would come through planning as some advice as to maybe our planning consultants could give advice on this as well, because there may be different practices in different locations. Thank you. Or different municipalities. Thank you.
I believe the straight line is used to determine the width of the property, the shoreline width, but it's not the actual property line.
And I understand that. So if that is the width of the property and we have a back line for the shoreline, a shore road allowance that's relatively straight, would be logical for me that would be the actual charge, not the survey figure, which has all these little ins and outs. So just, it's a practice I'd like to sort of throw out there that for our planning consultants to maybe comment on. Thank you.
Ms. Gunby, being acting department head for planning.
So just to clarify again, planning and shore road allowances are two separate processes altogether. The surveys we collect for shore road allowance purchases are not going to be the same or have the same requirements that we have for planning applications. The straight line, as the mayor clarified, is how you measure when you want to see the frontage of a property. We're not going to measure all the nooks and crannies, but we can't change the fact that a front line might be a little wonky, to be very professional in that statement. So the front property line is going to have curves and then the surveyor surveys to the water. So to just survey a straight line, to register that, there would still be pieces of land that the property owner would not own. So they survey the entire shore road allowance so that they can own the entire parcel. So planning has nothing to do with shore road allowance purchases. Planning is separate altogether.
Mayor, if I could just finish up on that and would ask that then the clerk's department give this some consideration, because if that were the case and there was some sort of much longer piece of property, I would think that the shore road allowance would mirror the front line, not go in a much sort of straighter line. And I've pointed this out before. That's actually making the fee much higher than if it were to follow a certain line. So that we see along the shoreline. So I'd just like you to consider that. Thank you.
Councilor Rienko, I believe I saw your hand.
Yeah, thanks. Just again, I have no problem with this particular application, but I noticed in the last application and this applications, these surveys aren't locating the structures that are on this property, especially the structures that are on the road, the shoreline right away that we're talking about. Can we please in future get all the structures on these drawings so we have a complete picture? Because according to the photograph, there's all kinds of structures on this shoreline and I can't see them and so on. So I think we need to only accept surveys where all the structures are surveyed on. And the last two of them have not had that.
Ms. Gunby.
Thanks again. I just want to remind council, well, and staff, I guess, at this point in time, that council did make this requirement quite a few years ago. So typically when a surveyor does submit the survey, they will also give us a sketch with the structures. So in the future, we'll make sure that those are included.
Thank you. Councilor Jarvis. I believe I saw your hand earlier.
Yeah, mine is in line with Councilor Rienko's, and I appreciate the answer from our CEO on that. To Sydney, it's an odd-looking shore road allowance in that one, they're only purchasing part one. Has part two or part three been purchased? Because I noticed, I believe the cottage is on part three. Have either of those been purchased?
Through your worship to Councillor Jarvis. I'm just pulling up the survey now. I believe part three is the neighboring property. So this is this survey is representing both properties.
Gotcha.
The survey, yes. So that's why they're only purchasing part one.
And so part one encompasses, okay, so my clarification, part one encompasses all their shoreline, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so yeah, I'm in agreement with Councilor Rienko. I mean, the cottage and the boathouse currently are both on that shore road allowance, but they don't show on here on the survey. So yeah, that will be helpful in the future. Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Okay, I have moved by Councilor Bochek, seconded by Councilor Cooper. Be it resolved, the council passed a closing bylaw 2021-060 to stop up, close, and convey part of the original shore road allowance in front of Island 31 or Union Jack Island, Baxter, being part 1, 35R-25241, now in the township of Georgian Bay, 470 Island 327 River, for the purchase price of $4,760.88 plus HST. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much. All right, I believe we have one more, and that's Clerk's Report 2021-19 with regards to 2833 Honey Harbor Road. And Ms. Amaro, I believe this one, Amaro rather, this is yours again.
Okay, so the last road allowance application is for application number R21-03 for 2833 Honey Harbor Road. The road allowance has been requested by the applicants as an existing structure encroaches onto the parcel. The applicants are looking to purchase the lands abutting part of the southwest boundary of the property, which is part 3 on plan 35R10761, which is also referred to as the wedge parcel. The applicant assumed that they owned this piece of land and has been accessing the property through this parcel. The road allowance for part 3 is 10 square meters at a cost of $6 per square meter for a purchase price of $60 plus HST. This is the location map of the subject lands. And you'll see here, part 3 is just this little triangle piece here. The next survey better highlights it. So it's just this piece that they're purchasing. You can see just the corner of their concrete building they have on their property encroaches onto that. So they're wanting to purchase that. So their property is no longer encroaching onto a piece of land they do not own. The application was received on June 18th, 2021. The property is zoned marine commercial type 3. There are no open building permits on file, and we have received no correspondence regarding this application. The applicant, Scott Metherall, is present this morning, so if you have any questions for him or myself, feel free to ask. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. You say the applicant is present.
I'm just going to
And
bring
we
him
know-
over.
Do we know if there are any members of the public also present that may want to speak to this?
I don't believe anyone else was registered this morning.
Okay. Mr. Metherall, good morning.
Good morning.
You wish to add a comment to the presentation?
Just a slight clarifying comment. I think the previous owner had assumed that that was part of the property. Through our due diligence in purchasing the property, our lawyers made us aware that it was not owned. And as soon as we became aware, we did file the application. So as part of the purchase of the property, we hand in hand submitted the application to purchase this piece of the property.
Okay, thank you. And if we have no members of the public, then I'll ask council, are there any questions from council? Councilor Cooper.
Thank you, and I don't really have any particular concerns. I'm just wondering if somebody could tell me, I'm having difficulty understanding where this is exactly. I see the Honey Harbor Road there, and then there's this sharp curve, and is this at the end of the Honey Harbor Road? I don't think it is, so I'm trying to figure out where it is. Can somebody answer that?
I believe Scott might be better at answering that question.
It's Dennis Robitaille's old shore shop location, which is in between Jerry White's house and Armin's shore shop at near the end of the Honey Harbor Road, not quite the end.
Oh, you're muted, Councilor Cooper.
Now I can see it. Thank you very much. I see where you're talking about. Thank you.
Councilor Bochek, did I see your hand?
No, it was just going to offer the location to Mr. Cooper.
Okay.
Counselor, to you.
Any other councillors wish to comment on this? I'm just impressed by the significant investment that Mr. Metherall is going to have to make if we pass this. But it's good to get these things cleaned up. The resolution, Ms. Way, can you confirm the bylaw numbers? I just, because from the note you sent me, I'm a little bit confused.
The bylaws in this resolution should be 060 and 061.
Now, do we need to then redo the prior resolution to confirm that, because I read off that one as bylaw 060 and you intended it to be 059, I believe.
Correct. Your resolutions, the bylaw numbers are inserted draft, and because the one application got deferred, all of the bylaw numbers have now been bumped, and I'm going to count that as a typo, the one you spoke before, so we don't have to.
Okay, so but just for everybody's information, the prior one was for bylaw 2021-059, not
Correct.
060. So now I have moved by Councillor Douglas, seconded by Councillor Hazelton. Be it resolved that council passed a closing bylaw 2021-060 to stop up, close, and convey part of the lane plan M-51 being part 3, 35R-10761, now in the township of Georgian Bay, 2833 Honey Harbor Road, for the purchase price of $60 plus HST. and that council passed a deeming bylaw 2021-061 to deem part of Plan M-71 in the former township of Baxter, now in the township of Georgian Bay, not to be a registered plan of subdivision for the purpose of the Planning Act 1990 CP 13 S50 (3). All those in favor? And that is carried. Mr. Metherall, you now have a fraction more land than you did when you woke up this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that ends our public meeting held under the authority of the Municipal Act. And now we go to a public meeting held under the authority of the Planning Act, which means I get to make another speech. This morning, there's a public meeting scheduled for two proposed zoning bylaw amendments. I'll briefly summarize the procedure to be utilized for the meeting. First, the clerk will advise council as to when, how, and to whom notice of the public meeting was circulated for the proposed amendments being considered. The clerk will also advise of the appeal procedures. Next, staff will advise of the purpose and effect of the bylaws and provide any other information that is relevant to the applications, and the clerk will summarize any correspondence on file. From there, the public will have an opportunity to provide comments on the amendments being considered. Please be respectful of time and be concise with your comments. All commentators are requested to state their name and address and sign in. After the public discussion, the public meeting will be closed. Council will then have an opportunity to provide comments for clarification. I now declare this meeting to be a public meeting pursuant to Section 34 of the Planning Act to deal with the following proposed amendments. Z21-03 for Proctor and Z21-09 for Gusev. To the clerk.
Notice of the public meeting were sent by first-class mail to the respective owners and assessed persons within 120 to 800 meters of the property subject to the proposed applications, and to those persons and agencies likely to have an interest in the applications. Those notices were sent at least 30 days prior to this morning's meeting. Included in each notice was an explanation of the purpose and effect of the proposed applications and a key map showing the location of the properties or a description of the lands to be affected by the proposed amendments. Other relevant information may also have been provided. These circulations were all provided in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act and the Township of Georgian Bay Official Plan. Members of the public are advised at this point that unless they make an oral or written submission to council before council makes a decision on these applications, that any subsequent appeal to the local planning appeals tribunal, which is no longer called that, but the OLT, may be dismissed by the tribunal. Anyone who wishes to be notified of council's decision respecting the proposed zoning bylaw amendments must submit a written request to the planning department.
All right. And I believe then our first application is regards to is report 2021-164, -64 for 164 Lone Pine Road. To our planner, Ms. Reed.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Yeah, great. So we have received a site-specific application for the property known as 164 Lone Pine Road. This is for lot 180 within the Wildwood Trailer Park in Port Severn. So the applicant, Mr. Gusev, has applied to establish a site-specific exception into the fish habitat type 1 zone. The area in front of the property is zoned fish habitat type 1, and due to the presence of critical fish habitat, the shoreline portion of the site due to the presence of critical fish habitat, the shoreline portion of the site, so where the dwelling is located, is zoned tourist commercial type 2 exception 5, and that will remain unchanged. So I do just have a brief presentation. I'm going to try and share my screen here, and I do have some images of the site which will show what is being rezoned and what is not. All right, is the slideshow up for everyone?
I can see something.
All right, looks good. Okay. All right, so again, the purpose of this application is to change the zoning from the lands from fish habitat type 1 to an exception, and the effect is to permit the construction of a 6 by 0.9 meter pole dock with a 0 meter setback from the fish habitat type 1 zone. A fish habitat impact assessment was submitted with the application. I do want to note that this is a replacement of an existing pole dock. So the existing dock measures roughly 5.4 meters by 1.2 meters. So that's 18 feet by about 4 feet. And it is also a pole dock. As mentioned, there was a fish habitat impact assessment that was submitted with the application, and this was completed by Riverstone Environmental Solutions on behalf of the applicant. We've also received a permit issued by the Port Severn Campers Association, as well as Parks Canada, which do permit the removal of the existing dock and the replacement or the installation of a new dock on legs. Following the submission of the staff report to the township, we also did receive comments from the District of Muskoka, who have no objections to the proposed amendment. Here's just a brief policy framework overview. So under the provincial policy statement, the site is considered a settlement area. District official plan, it's in the urban center. Township official plan, it is residential with a policy or special policy area for Wildwood, and it is located in Port Severn. And then in zoning, the lot itself is tourist commercial type 2 exception 5, but as mentioned, the dock is located within the fish habitat type 1 zone. So this is just a location or a site map showing the location of the site within the Wildwood Trailer Park. So I have an arrow pointing sort of to where their dwelling is, and then also highlighted in yellow, you can see the location of the existing dock, and that's what is proposed to be replaced. Again, here's just an overview of the site, which was provided by the applicant. So that concludes my presentation, and I can answer any questions at this time.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And I understand the applicant is present. And so my next question would be if the applicant wishes to add anything to the presentation before this is discussed by council. And perhaps if we could have everybody's faces showing that the presentation can be set aside.
Yep.
Your worship, perhaps I can comment on the correspondence received.
You may.
Thank you. Prior to the initial public meeting in March, 3 letters of support were received from Derek Wisher, Doug Grundy, and Mark Smith. The Madawaska Club of Go Home Bay also submitted a letter of no objection in correspondence from the
I
district.
think you're referring to the wrong case.
Am I referring to the wrong one?
Yes, you are.
I am, you are right.
I
My
think
page, my
we got
apologies.
turned around in some of your notes, the 2 applications.
They did, hold on.
But if somebody from Go Home Bay wants to comment on Severn Sound, I guess we must allow it.
Sorry, your worship. 2 letters of no objection were received from the Severn Sound Environmental Association and the District of Muskoka.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gusev, do you wish to add anything to the presentation?
No.
Okay, that's to the point. Thank you very much. Council, any questions in regards to this application? Councilor Rienko.
Okay, one observation and one question. The question is the dock that's being built, is it any larger or is it the same? Like we have pictures here with our presentation. So I see a picture of what's there now. Is the dock going to be any larger?
It's actually going to be slightly smaller.
Smaller. Okay, and I also noticed on the permit from Parks Canada that the permit's only valid to January 12th, 2022. I assume then the dock's got to be built before the end of the year. And I'm just wondering, with all the bureaucracy involved in getting these permits, is this a reasonable time to get it built to the next 3 months, or was it plans on maybe doing this next year? I just wanted to find out if it's going to be completed during this period of the permit.
We certainly hope it would be. I'm not sure how the process works. It is sort of, if your building permit is required for the structure, which is under 107 square feet. If it's required, I would, very respectfully ask the Township of Georgian Bay, please process it quickly, because we've been at this process since actually February of this year, and there was some issues in terms of getting that communication from the township. So we could not complete our application until early June.
So can somebody from the township comment about the length of process if you have to approve this and then get a building permit? And can this all be done in the next couple of months, or should this proponent be going for an extension to his permit?
Mr. Oster, I see your appearance.
So good morning, Your Worship, members of council. If council chose to approve the application today, I do not foresee a timeline issue with getting a building permit once the 20-day appeal period had expired.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Bocek.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A little bit more insight into this. I've spoken with Igor and Wildwood Park about this application. I've done a site visit to the applicant's site. This is similar to something that we seen a few months ago that came aboard, and I addressed it by letting council know that this is a man-made canal. It's not a part of any natural habitat. There is an F1 fish habitat in there, which is also pretty much throughout the whole Wildwood Park area. And we've granted permissions to have docks, shore walls, other things modified. In this case here, it's very, very small. There is an existing dock there. And I believe, Igor, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we're only looking at adding 1 foot to the length of the existing dock.
It's only 2 feet in length, but actually we're making it narrower by 1 foot.
Yeah, so you take if you take the existing footprint of this dock, which is in disrepair, and he's going to extend it a couple of feet and make it narrower and go right back in pretty much the same spot. Definitely, it's a small property. I didn't see any real issue with this. I've spoken to our planning department several times about this and our CAO, and I am certainly in favor of moving this application forward so that he can get this built before the ice comes in. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councilors wish to speak to this matter? Seeing none, I have moved by Councillor Cooper, seconded by Councillor Douglas. Be it resolved, the Development Services Report 2021-65, dated September 15, 2021, with respect to zoning bylaw amendment application Z2103 be received. And the council enacts bylaw 2021-0, what number would you like, Ms. Way? Are we at 62.3 now?
62.
Bylaw 2021-062 to rezone a portion of the subject lands to a site-specific fish habitat type 1 exception. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That is carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, councilors.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
And now we're going to go up the Georgian Bay shore, which Miss Way can't wait for. And we have in front of us application, Development Service Department Report 2021-65 in regard to 33366 Georgian Bay Shore, zoning bylaw amendment application Z2103. And I have here to our planner, Mr. Oster.
Good morning, everyone. Just going to bring the presentation up here. All right. So this morning we have a public meeting for zoning bylaw amendment Z2103 for Proctor. The lands are addressed as 33366 Georgian Bay Shore and located within the Go Home Bay community. Here we have a overview location map of the subject property outlined, shown in the gray hatching. It's located approximately 1 kilometer east of Star Island, and as mentioned, located within the Go Home Bay community. The 2018 aerial imagery, the property is well treed with mature vegetation, and the surrounding land uses are a majority of shoreline residential properties. So just a brief overview of the policy framework. The lands are considered to be rural lands within the context of the PPS. They are designated waterfront within the district official plan. They're also designated waterfront and residential area within the Go Home Bay waterfront community as part of the township official plan, and are presently zoned Go Home Bay residential SR3 and fish habitat type 1 along the shoreline, as you can see here in this hatching. So the purpose and effect of the application is to rezone a portion of the FH1 zone to a site-specific FH1 exception zone to permit the installation of a floating dock in accordance with section 4.1.13 of the zoning bylaw. The applicant has since revised the location of the proposed dock following the initial public meeting that was held back in March, based on the recommendations of their environmental consultant, who took the comments made during the public meeting into consideration. The township's environmental consultant has peer-reviewed the fish habitat impact assessments that were provided by the applicant and does agree with the findings and the recommendations. And the applicant has also, as mentioned, revised the proposed rezoning to only apply to a portion of the FH1 zone where the dock location is recommended. So the public meeting that was held in March, there were some comments made during that meeting. Just to kind of summarize the comment and the response. The first being a request to have the assessment of lower fluctuating water levels considered in the fish habitat assessment. And the applicant's consultant did take that into consideration in their updated fish habitat assessment when recommending a location for the proposed dock. They have located and recommended an area where the water is at its deepest point. There was comments made regarding the MNRF rules and regulations. So staff did consult with the MNR and they have advised that their policies do not differentiate between the different types of fish habitat, whether it be type 1, type 2, or type 3, but rather their policies regulate more the type of structure. So whether somebody was proposing a floating dock versus a crib dock or some sort of fixed dock. Floating docks do not require MNRF approval, but the MNR has stated that they agree with the approach the township has taken to ensure that any potential impacts to fish habitat are assessed through development applications. There was also a comment made regarding the boat impact on the lake bed and any potential disturbance. So the applicant's consultant again has taken this into consideration in recommending a location for the dock and has recommended a location where the water depth is at the greatest. In terms of precedent, there was some concern at the public meeting. Staff just wish to advise that all Planning Act applications are evaluated and critiqued on their own merits and the applicable policies that are in effect at the time the application is made. So the precedent that would be set, if any, is that the Township of Georgian Bay values the environment and has a high standard of assessment for applications to ensure that there are no negative impacts as a result of development. And I also just put in a note here that there were 4 letters of no objection or support that were received. So this is the site plan that was submitted with the application as part of the fish habitat impact assessment. You can see the subject property outlined in red here. These different areas here differentiate and show the extent of the type 1 fish habitat or the mapped type 1 fish habitat. The applicant's consultant did take into consideration multiple dock locations along the shore, being A, B, C, D, and E. And after doing an assessment of all the different potential locations for that dock, they are recommending location C to be the most appropriate area for the dock. And in times of extreme high water where the water is over the 177 contour, location E would also be permitted as an alternative location for the dock should these lands here be underwater. So here are some renderings of the proposed floating dock that the applicant is proposing to install. It does comply with all of the docking provisions in terms of length, width, etc. So the comments that were made, there were 3 letters of support or no objection from members of the public. The Madawaska Club of Go Home Bay did comment that they continue to have no objection to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. District staff have advised that they too have no objection to approval of the application, subject to the appropriate development control techniques being used to implement the recommendations of the fish habitat impact assessments and the associated peer reviews. So some key points from the staff report. The fish habitat has been assessed by the applicant's environmental consultant. Their assessment included additional work to address the comments that were made during the initial public meeting. Their findings concluded that a dock can be installed on the lands with the implementation of mitigation measures. Any potential impacts can be appropriately mitigated. They do state that the fish habitat is best described as type 2 based on the M&R classifications, opposed to the type 1 that it is mapped as. The township's environmental consultant has completed peer reviews of the fish habitat impact assessments provided by the applicant and does agree with the findings and the recommendations as proposed. No amendments are sought related to the built form standards for a dock. The MNRF has clarified that their regulations do not differentiate between the types of fish habitat, but rather the type of structure that is being proposed, and that they agree with the township's approach taken in this application. The proposed dock would be accessory to the principal residential use of the lands, and the use of site plan control would allow for the implementation of the mitigation measures that are proposed through the assessments. So just an overview of the application process. So they go through, we had the previous public meeting back in March that allowed some opportunity for the applicant to take into consideration those comments and make any potential changes. As noted, they did go back and work with their environmental consultant to propose a new location for the proposed dock based on the environmental assessments. And they have brought that forward today for council's consideration. So now there's a staff report presented here with a detailed policy analysis and a recommendation. So planning staff are of the opinion that the application is consistent with the PPS and conforms to the district and township official plans and are recommending approval of the application. And this is just the recommended resolution. So that does conclude my presentation. The applicant's consultants from MHBC are also in attendance, and I do know that they have a presentation they too would like to make. So I would turn it over to them.
You're on mute, Your Worship.
While we're turning it over, Ms. Wade, this is the opportunity to tell us about the correspondence.
I would love to. So prior to the initial public meeting in March, 3 letters of support were received from Derek Wishart, Doug Grundy, and Mark Smith. Madawaska Club of Go Home Bay also submitted a letter of no objection and correspondence from the District of Muskoka stating no objection so long as the appropriate development control techniques are used to implement the recommendations of the Fish Habitat Impact Assessment and any recommendations of the associated peer review as required. For this public meeting, 3 letters of no objection were received from Laura McFeeters and Michael Williams and the Madawaska Club of Go Home Bay and the District of Muskoka.
Thank you very much. I see a couple of new names. Does somebody want to make a presentation at this point to supplement what we heard from our planner?
Sure, I just have a few points to
Robinson,
make,
a familiar
Your Worship.
face.
Sure, thanks. Nice to see you, Your Worship, and everybody. I just have a very brief, I had a presentation prepared, but Mr. Oster has covered it in detail, and I don't think there's a need, obviously, for me to repeat what he said. But there's a couple of key points I'd just like to make on behalf of the applicants. And those key points specifically relate to the two key modifications to the bylaw that have been proposed as a result of this further review. Is the dock's been again moved to the deepest portion of the site, and we did undertake a site visit with township staff, and it's very evident from the site visit that this is the best location for the dock on the site. So it's been moved to that more deeper area. And the second major change is that the application's been scoped to only remove or only amend the fish habitat type 1 zoning for the area where the dock is proposed, not the entirety of the site, which is what the previous public meeting identified, was that the whole shoreline of the property would go into a site-specific zone. So the remainder of the property and the frontage stays in the FH1 zone and at its parent zone. So we've really scoped the area that's subject to the amendment here. So those are the two key modifications that have been made. And then secondly, as your staff has identified, the fluctuating water levels were one of the key concerns. So this deep area of the site is accessible in all water levels, except we've characterized it as extreme water levels. And we've referred to that as water levels over the 177.4. And we've provided that opportunity for an alternative dock location should those high water levels ever be realized in the future again. So it's a bit of an insurance policy that's built into the bylaw with respect to that, to recognize the unique situation on Georgian Bay. Secondly, the environmental concerns, they've been well reviewed and considered, and the peer review by the municipality's consultant has identified that this is the most appropriate location and that all environmental considerations have been addressed. And finally, the precedent piece was the last real piece of inquiry. And I think what this application's really demonstrated is that a fulsome review is appropriate where there's type 1 fish habitat identified, and that's been completed in this instance. So it demonstrates the fulsome review, the peer review by the township's consultants, and the fact that all the comments have been considered and appropriately addressed, and we've come up with the best solution and most appropriate area for the site. So I think the precedent here is a good precedent that the township set on this application. So with that, Your Worship, if there's any questions that result from the presentation, we do agree with the staff report and recommend that council do pass this bylaw as recommended by staff. So thank you very much for your time.
All right, thank you very much. And I don't believe we have any members of the public who wish to comment at this meeting. Mr. Oster.
There are a few members of the public who did register for the meeting, and some have raised their hands there. So
okay,
bring them over into the meeting.
All right, I see a number of additional names here. Mr. Folds, do you wish to speak to this matter?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. My name is Peter Folds. I'm here on behalf of the Madawaska Club of Go Home Bay. As Ms. Way has indicated, we have submitted a letter of no objection to the proposed amendment. The only thing I wish to add is that as a cottagers association and a landowner, we do support the importance of the protection of fish habitat on Georgian Bay. We also recognize that the official plan and the zoning bylaw provide a process by which an applicant can seek to have a dock in an area that has been previously zoned as fish habitat. And that process has been followed in this instance. And we believe that the expert reports that have been submitted amply demonstrate that in this particular instance, a dock can be added in this location with no negative impact on the fish habitat. And for that reason, the Madawaska Club, as I've indicated, has no objection to this application.
Thank you very much. Ms. Proctor, do you wish to add to this, being one of the applicants?
Yes, I mean, I just wanted to state that I feel like we've come up with a very strong revised proposal that considers the water levels. We have the support of the community and several of our neighbors, as noted, and there's been no any sort of negative feedback or anything from our community. And given that we are zoned residential and this is a water access only property, we really hope that this would be approved by council. Thanks.
Thank you. And I see Mr. Grundy. Do you wish to add any comments?
I just wanted to say I'm a neighbor. I'm at 33302 Georgian Bay Shore. That's essentially that large peninsula to the west and north between Star Island and the subject property. There's an island in between us as well. We own a fair bit of shoreline, all behind what we call Fraser's Island, and then down the Serpentine, all of which I think is now zoned as fish habitat. Our experience has been that in the spring in particular, when we arrive up at our cottage, the fish are using our floating docks as protection, and they're hiding under the dock. So I'm very much in support of the application, and I don't think I have anything more to add.
Thank you very much. All right, I think I've acknowledged everybody here with names that I didn't recognize or weren't here 5 minutes ago. So I'm going to turn this over to council. I see Councillor Bochek followed by Councillor Cooper, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is to Jamie Robinson. Jamie, in your delegation, you said that there was no proposed change to the F1 fish habitat that encompasses the shoreline except for where the dock is going to be placed. Just some clarity on that. The shadow of the dock on the lake bottom, would it remain F1 fish habitat and we're amending to allow the dock to go in that? Or would that area be changed to an F2 fish habitat? Or would that area not be recognized as a fish habitat and just the area around the dock be still recognized as an F1 fish habitat?
Through your worship to the councillor, I'm just going to pull up the piece of the zoning amendment here on the screen. So the schedule from the amendment to identify just visually, I think that's the easiest way to describe it. So Councillor Bochek, this is the area of the site where the dock's proposed.
Right.
And on the next figure, so this hatching right here shows roughly that area of the dock that's identified on the previous slide. So this is the area to be zoned. This area of the rest of the shoreline stays in the FH1 zone. So this area here gets zoned FH1 exception to permit the dock, where the previous public meeting identified the entirety of the shoreline being zoned to that exception zone. So it just really scopes down the area.
Great, thank you for the explanation.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor Kutzier, and this is an excellent report. And I'd just like to start with saying, in principle, I support this application, but I do have some questions for our planners and our planning consultant. And it has to do with the reference to precedent being set. And I'm not objecting to this, as I said, but I want to caution with respect to the term precedent and whether there will be precedent or not, and whether this could be used as precedent in the future. I'm not sure if any of you are aware, but the Township of Georgian Bay was taken to court some time ago, some years ago, Superior Court. It's called the Le Mans case. And basically, the Superior Court, and just making a decision about precedent, said that Lamont was allowed to have a 900 square foot sleeping cabin. This isn't fresh habitat, I understand, but it's about precedent. And the reason being is that even though almost all the approvals in the township of Georgian Bay were for 600 square feet, there had been 3 exceptions made. And so Superior Court said, if you've made 3 exceptions, maybe you should then allow a 4th. So I'm not sure I quite get the fact that there wouldn't be a precedent set here. And so the only thing I'm really asking, and perhaps this is either to you, Brad, or to you, Jason, I wonder if there's a way to deal with something like that. And I'm talking about perhaps specifics that would allow this not to be a precedent. And what I mean by that is there something we can put in the wording here that would say a few things, such as this is a very large lot, this has a lot of frontage, there's reasonable water depth. I know it's all in the report, but I think if it was in the bylaw, there's acceptable water depth, there are dock restrictions, sizes and so forth. And I'm not sure if it's sitting in some report somewhere, it's going to be quite as clear as making sure that we have the rationale right in the bylaw. So I'm sort of trying to understand from our planner, Brad, great report, by the way, and Jason, if you could comment on some way that we could, I guess what I'm asking for here is belt and suspenders. And to make sure that when we come up against this elsewhere, that we don't end up in Superior Court and somebody saying, well, you gave approval over here, and I don't really care that there's 600 feet of frontage and 4 acres or whatever. Any comments from either of you, please? Thank you.
Mr. Austin.
So I can start here, and if Mr. Farragon has anything that you'd like to add, that would be great. So I would just say that the township's policies are in effect to ensure that there's no negative impacts to these environmental features. And as a requirement to make a complete application here, the applicant was required to submit a fish habitat impact assessment that was peer reviewed by the township's environmental consultant, which subsequently did bring up a few items that went back to the applicant to address, that was once again peer reviewed from the township's consultant to make sure that the appropriate methodologies and everything was used in that assessment. So the township policies exist to ensure that there is no negative impact. So the precedent here is that the township values the environment significantly, and staff's recommendation is based on the fact that it was demonstrated that there would be no impact, or any potential impacts could be appropriately mitigated. So it would be, as long as it's demonstrated that there is no negative impacts, it's not necessarily going to be staff's recommendation on all amendments that come forward to the fish habitat zone that it be approved. There would have to be the appropriate assessment done prior to assess the impacts.
And if
Mr.
I may,
Farragon, do you wish to add to this?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, if I could supplement Mr. Oster's response, which was absolutely 100% correct. I certainly appreciate the comment and the intent behind it, because it speaks to risk and risk mitigation. And while not a lawyer, what I would say in my 23 years of practice, the precedent as it's been described in Mr. Oster's report is correct. That under the Planning Act, each application has to be assessed on its own merits and has to be decided on the merits of each application, which includes the unique features of the site. Your question, Councillor, partly relates to administration as well, and how the township's practice around framing zoning bylaws amendments. But what I would also point out is, in this particular instance, this matter has already been to a public hearing in March. And the Planning Act does require, when Planning Council makes its decision today, to provide reasons for the decision. prior to passing the bylaw to demonstrate that it has taken the public feedback into consideration, and it is required to state how that public feedback has influenced this decision. So I would suggest to you that as an alternative to including it in the bylaw, through your decision-making process on this application this morning, you have the opportunity to do just that and to describe why you feel it is appropriate to allow an exception in this instance if you're so inclined to allow for that exception.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Jarvis.
For Brad, and apropos of the information that Mr. Robinson provided, I see that, well, I'm in full agreement with what's going on here, and the dock location looks good to me. There is an alternate location should there be extreme high water. Location E, I believe it is on the mapping that Mr. Robinson provided. And the question to you, Brad, is there going to be another fish habitat assessment required should that dock have to be moved in the situation where there's high water?
So through the mayor to Councillor Jarvis, the fish habitat impact assessment that was submitted with this application assessed both of those locations.
Oh, thank you.
So a subsequent one would not be required.
So that would mean that we would end up with, if the dock is moved, we'd end up with two locations that are basically exceptions to the fish habitat, the FH1.
Correct. However, the one location would only be in times where the water was above that specified elevation.
And the other location would be removed from that exception? Thank you.
Correct.
Okay.
There would be permitted one dock.
Got it. Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Hazelton.
Thank you, Mayor Kutzier. I would like to, first of all, applaud the work that has been done to react to the comments and to do the additional studies. One of the things that I think our township needs desperately is examples of good fish habitat impact assessments and peer reviews. And I think what the Proctors have arranged for here is an excellent example. I would really like to kind of ask our consultant planner, Jason, and our resident planner, Brad, how do we get this fish habitat impact assessment and the peer review of it considered a kind of a standard template that we would want to provide to anybody requiring a fish habitat impact assessment, so they know what a good quality job it is, because when we look at other examples that have come forward, they don't even hold a candle to the quality work that was done here or the comprehensiveness. And I think that we can gain very significant value from using this as a template. Just wanted to put that out. How do we get this moved forward to be valuable in the future as well? Thank you.
Mr. Oster.
So through the mayor to Councillor Hazelton, the township is actually working, the planning department is working on preparing and working with our environmental consultants to actually establish a terms of reference for environmental studies. So through that process, we can, make minimum requirements for the studies that are submitted with applications. And we would be working with our environmental consultant to establish that list.
Thank you. I absolutely love what you just said. And I thank you very much for the proactive action that you're taking on this. It's something that we've been asking for several years. And we didn't ask you to do this, but the fact that you've done it just speaks volumes to the quality of work you guys are doing. Thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Cooper, I think you've already spoken to this.
You're right, I have. And all I'm asking, I think it's an excellent report, and there's been so many really positive things come out today, but I would just ask that, is there any way that we can do what Jason has suggested in terms of being specific with respect to the rationale for this decision? I'd turn to our clerk or to Jason or whomever can sort of deal with my desire with this particular application and many others as it pertains to fish habitat, that we have belt and suspenders. So that's my request, a slight amendment or whatever has to happen in terms of where that verbiage could be with respect to the rationale. Any suggestions? Thank you.
I open to any suggestions. I will note that the first part of our resolution is, be it resolved, the Development Service Report 2021-65 be received. So in other words, we are making specific reference to the report in the resolution. I know you're asking for more, and I don't know if what is appropriate to add to that.
Perhaps I could ask Jason what he thought he might be able to be done. Thank you.
Mr. Farragon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So what I was describing earlier comes from my experience with other municipalities, and not being completely familiar with Ms. Way's administration around resolutions. In some cases, some municipalities will also have, after they pass the bylaw, they will have an accompanying resolution that they pass, which indicates they have received or have not received public consultation. And in the instance where they had received public consultation, they provide what I would describe as being a summary explanation of how the public consultation has influenced their decision. So in this case, an element would be to say that the exception to the fish habitat zone has been limited to the area where the dock will be installed, hopefully on a permanent basis, subject to the changing water levels. So that is the system that I was imagining. You are correct, Mr. Mayor, in the sense that the resolution does refer to the staff report, and the staff report also addresses the public feedback that has been received, and as Mr. Oster has described in the report in his presentation today, how the application has responded to that public feedback. So I do think it would address, I think, the spirit and intent of what Councillor Cooper is asking for this morning. And of course, we'd be more than pleased to speak with Ms. Gunby and Ms. Way further about the system that I'm describing that I've seen implemented in other municipalities.
Thank you. Ms. Gunby.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do appreciate the fact that every time you see my face, it's because I need to interrupt and say something. I think that Mr. Oster can verify, but that's the information that we put in the decision that we mail out to people, and not in a separate resolution at this time.
Well, I'm going to make a suggestion, and that is that we pass this resolution as it is, that, and then we take a short break. And if anybody wants to craft an additional resolution, then we can consider that. But I don't want to go into crafting resolutions right now, simply because of the time circumstances, and we're overdue for a 10-minute break. Councillor Hazelton.
I would be comfortable, given what I've heard from our planning department, our CAO and our clerk, of asking them to draft a resolution for a subsequent meeting. I don't think we need to have it necessarily today, but I think it does need to be recorded. So I would be comfortable with that if others are as well.
Thank you. All right. Right now, I have in front of me, moved by Councillor Cooper, seconded by Councillor Douglas. Be it resolved, the Development Service Report 2021-65, dated September 15th, 2021, with respect to zoning bylaw amendment application Z21-03 be received. And the Council enacts bylaw 2021-063 to rezone a portion of the subject lands to a site-specific fish habitat type 1 exception zone. All those in favor? And that is carried. Now, Council, I'm going to ask you to indulge me. The last time I read a resolution for the prior case, I actually read the resolution I read just now. I read the wrong resolution. So please allow me to read the correct resolution. I'm surprised the clerk didn't catch me on this. And that would be moved by Councillor Jarvis, seconded by Councillor Wienko. Be it resolved that Council received Development Service Report 2021-64 and approves zoning bylaw amendment application Z21-09 by passing bylaw 2021-062, being a bylaw to permit the replacement of an existing dock within Wildwood by the Severn. All those in favor? I appreciate it. I appreciate everyone's patience, and I apologize for my shuffling the papers the wrong way. Ms. Proctor, you have the resolution you required. Thank you very much for your patience. And as you've heard from council, we greatly appreciate all the work that you and staff and your advisors put into this to make sure that your dock is placed in the, may I call it, the least harmful place possible. Thank you. Council, I'm going to suggest that we come back at 11:30. We'll have a quick 10-minute break, and then we'll see if we can't get this meeting done before lunch, because we know at 1 o'clock we have a committee of the whole meeting. So let's see everybody at 11:30, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're muted, your worship.
That's probably why nobody was responding when I was muted. Ms. Way has drafted for us a resolution. I don't know if you can post it or you just want me to verbalize it.
I'll share my screen
Okay.
and then you can read it.
And this will be moved by Councillor Cooper, seconded by Councillor Hazelton. Whereas Council enacted bylaw 2021-063, and whereas Council received Development Service Report 2021-65, that Council received, I guess that's whereas, okay, that Council received significant public consultation regarding the fish habitat type 1 exception, and that it was determined that at 333666 Georgian Bay Shore is an exceptional circumstance for dock location with the outlying fish habitat, and that any future applications of similar nature will be fully examined separate from Council Resolution P070-2021 of September 15th, 2021. And I think what we do with this resolution, Council, is we guard against a precedent concern as expressed by Councillor Cooper. Mr. Oster.
I just wanted to maybe propose a slight change. I have the exception number if we wanted to be more specific on the FH1
Yeah, that would be
exception.
excellent.
So it would be FH1 exception 9.
Thank you. I love minor modifications like that. Councillor Hazelton.
Just curious on the Georgian Bay Shore number, is it 333666 or 33366?
It's one too many sixes, sorry.
Yes, I was wondering about that myself. We're doing this on the fly. Councillor Cooper.
I'd just like to thank Clerk Way for drafting this, and I'm really pleased that we are putting on our belt and suspenders. I think in this particular case, it's pretty critical that we don't allow ourselves to be pushed around in Superior Court in the future. Thank you.
All right, then I'm going to say all those in favor. All right, that's carried. Thank you. Okay. Now we're going to go for a planning application not subject to a public meeting. Okay, Councilor Bochek.
Thank you, Mayor Coates. I believe my screen was frozen on the last vote, and so I was putting up my hand to include me in the voting, although it's already been passed.
Okay, well, let us now record that it was passed unanimously then. Thank you very much for the clarification.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. All right, so now we are going, let me get my screen up here. We're going to Development Services 2020 Report 2021-73. And I got to go through 100 pages to get down to it because of the extensiveness of the prior reports. And Mr. Oster, I believe this is your report with regards to the Moose Deer Point Community Water Intake Protection. Go ahead, please.
So this report is mostly just to advise council and look to get their comment on the district initiated official plan amendment that proposes essentially just to recognize the intake protection area of influence around a source water intake for the Moose Deer Point community. So the district was made aware of this this feature recently, and they have initiated an official plan amendment to essentially incorporate this into their policies to ensure that it's protected moving forward in the future, and making sure that the applicable policies would apply to this intake along with all of the other municipal intakes within the district. So staff are recommending that there be no objection from Township Council, and that we are also seeking direction to be able to initiate a township official plan amendment to incorporate the same policies and ensure protection at the local level if necessary once we complete a review of our official plan. So that's a pretty brief summary of the report and everything there, but if council has any questions, I will be happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is to recognize water intake and protect it, basically. Councillor Wienko, followed by Councillor, I think it's Jarvis I saw, followed by Councillor Cooper.
Yeah, this is fairly similar to the source water protection that we have at Port 7. So if we follow that process, we should have staff, septic inspection staff, or source water protection. We don't have any source water protection, but they should go out and inspect all these properties on, I guess, the North Shore, the septic system, because they're all sources of potential contamination. So is that planned over the next year or so to inspect all these properties, make sure the septic systems are all properly working, and if there's any other types of contamination like outside fuel tanks and all that kind of stuff, is that all being done by our township?
Mr. Oster.
So through the mayor to Councillor Bianco, that would be something that the building department would review as part of their septic reinspection program. And they, depending on the area of influence, if there were properties there, they could be incorporated into that reinspection program.
But this is not a routine site inspection. Like, for example, the intake at Port 7, our building department has to go every 5 years to all the properties within that kilometer or so of the intake. So are they going to have the same process for this intake? Every 5 years they go out?
So I would expect that the building department would be doing this in accordance with the same policies that they follow for all of the source protection areas. The Port Severn one is a little bit more unique than, say, the area in MacTier or this newly identified one at Moose Point, as it's not actually part of the South Georgian Bay Lake Simcoe source protection plan. They're not captured within that watershed and therefore are not subject to that plan. However, the policies for the septic reinspection program would apply as per the township's normal practices.
Well, normal practice is going around every 8 years or something, like every 7 or 8 years. But I like to get clarification from our own staff is how we are treating these intakes. If they are different in Port 7, then they shouldn't be. I think the source water protection program is very specific, and I think all water intakes in our township should be treated the same way. So maybe sometime you can get a clarification on that from our building department.
Absolutely. If there are some amendments that are proposed to the township plan, should council go with the recommended resolution, we would definitely be bringing forward a more comprehensive report.
Thank you. Councillor Jarvis.
Yeah, apropos of the report we got from Dr. Pat Shaw-Fraser on Monday regarding their water testing and a specific area up in 12 Mile called Bloody Bay. Do we know where this intake is in relation to Bloody Bay, which I can't find on a map? Because there's an issue there.
If you look at the map that or they show the intake and the treatment plant, I believe Bloody Bay, and correct me if I'm wrong, was not where Chippewa Island is indicated on.
That's called Isaacs Bay when I look at it on Google Maps. That's what I was worried about. You don't want to put a water intake in an area where you've got significant pollution, as noted by Dr. Pat Shaw-Fraser.
Well, the intake already exists.
Ah, That
It's
makes it
now
even
being
worse.
recognized. What I believe has happened is with consultation with the Moose Deer Point people, we now realize that they had a water intake that district had not recognized before.
acknowledged.
So this is, dare I call it, catch up.
Right. But it still leads to my question about this Bloody Bay
Which is
information.
Which is why on Monday I asked that information be shared with Moose Deer Point.
Yeah, no, I remember that. Can Brad help us here? Do you know where Bloody Bay is in relation to that water intake, Brad?
I'm just trying to pull it up on the map here. So if I do find it, I will bring it up.
Yeah, okay. That's my note of concern. I think we got to make sure that's noted.
Councillor Cooper.
Pretty much ditto, but just wanted to say that this is pretty serious. Water intake and where we may, if it's Bloody Bay, we may have an issue, even if it's very close by, we still should be pretty worried about it. And so what I was going to suggest is that as part of perhaps, Brad, a report that comes in the future, that anytime we have information from our water testing results, that we advise our building department, our inspection program includes the results from this testing, because it's telling us a story, and we need to take advantage of the information that we've been provided. Thank you.
Councillor Bocek.
Thank you. And hopefully this isn't redundant because I had to shut off my audio and video to catch up to my bandwidth here in Port Severn. Couple questions. Is this a municipally owned water intake, or is it from the Moose Deer Point band? Is it their intake? And if so, who regulates it, who monitors it, and where does all the stats and everything end up on water quality?
I believe it's Moose Deer Point's intake.
So I guess my question is, does the District of Muskoka monitor it, or do water sampling, or have any action with this intake, or is it strictly run and operated by the members of the Moose Deer Point Reserve? I just finding it confusing. Source water protection is a very, very important part of the waters in this township, but I'm just wondering if we have jurisdiction here, or if we're overstepping our boundaries.
Mr. Austin.
Or what district is, because I know that intake is off Cucamonga Road. I know pretty much where it is, and it's pretty open water. I'm just a little confused by this whole thing. Maybe it was explained to me while I was away from the meeting. I did read the report though.
So
Brad, if you can offer anything on that.
Sure. So through the mayor to Councillor Bocek, this is the Moose Deer Point community intake. So it is not a district or a township intake. It serves the Moose Deer Point community. So they do all of the monitoring of the water, and it feeds their system essentially. So the amendments that the district are proposing essentially just speak to ensuring that the community is circulated on any Planning Act applications within the area, so that they have an appropriate notice given to them, so that they can comment on it, in ensuring that there would be no threats to the intake or the water as a result of the development.
Good. Thanks very much for the clarification. I'm sorry for wasting everybody's time in there.
I don't believe you wasted our time. Any other comments? Councillor Yanko.
If you look at Google Maps, Bloody Bay is at the top end of the 12-mile bay. So it's probably 4 or 5 miles difference between the intake and where Bloody Bay is. So that's just, if you do that on Google Maps, you'll see it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cooper.
And that may very well be, but we also have residential properties along the north shore of a very narrow bay. So there's other sources that could be concerning. So maybe the inspection still makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
The resolution I have in front of me reads, be it moved by Councillor Douglas, seconded by Councillor Hazelton, be it resolved that Development Service Report 2021-73 dated September 15th, 2021, with respect to District Official Plan Amendment 53, Moose Deer Point Community Water Intake Protection, be received. And that the clerk be directed to submit comments on behalf of the Township of Georgian Bay regarding OPA 53, stating that the township has no objection to District Official Plan Amendment 53. And that should District Official Plan Amendment 53 be adopted, township staff be directed to review the township official plan and are authorized to initiate a township official plan amendment to ensure conformity with the district official plan amendment if required. And that township staff be directed to consult with the District of Muskoka, Moose Deer Point community, and other municipalities and agencies regarding implementation. Councilor Yanko.
I just want to make sure that Councillor Cooper sits on that committee where this official plan will be, I guess, adopted at the district level. But I think he should bring up the issue of inspecting these properties to the north. And I don't know if we wanted to put that right in our resolution here, that we'll hear back from our staff about what their plans are for inspection, because I know the district probably, they may do it too, I don't know. But somebody has to go out and inspect these properties probably every 5 years. So I just want to know where that authority lies, either with the township or the district. So I think we put something in here that we should get this clarified. And then maybe Councillor Cooper can re-clarify it when he goes up to the district and comes up for one of his committee meetings.
Well, if we add an additional sentence, same thing, and that township staff report back to council in regard to the inspections of the septic system inspections in the area or within the intake area.
It's more than septic inspection. It's also any other contamination on the property. And if they have an outside fuel tank or something like that, this also comes into play too. And any contaminants that can go in the water besides septic too.
CEO Gunby.
Thanks, Your Worship. I was just going to say before Councillor Ranko finished his thought there, so I'm not sure if this is going to help, that we can just take this as staff direction and have our CBO send council an email on the plans for that area. But if you're speaking of additional contaminants, then I'm not sure what the CBO can offer for that.
Well, he does that when he goes out to Port 7. He looks at all contaminants.
Okay, well, we can just use that as staff direction and I can have him touch base with council.
Just whatever you do in Port 7 should do up there too.
Okay.
Yeah. Sounds good. All those in favor? And that is passed. Thank you very much. Or should I say carried? All right, now we're going to go to staff reports. Clerk Report 2021-20 in regards to Georgian Bay store land transfer.
Okay, so the township is looking to accept the lands under Pine Valley Road, also known as Lone Pine Road, from the Georgian Bay Store Ltd, and dedicate the lands as a public highway. The land transfer will create a natural severance and 2 lots will be created. In April 2021, it was brought to staff's attention that registration was never completed along Pine Valley Road. Currently, the Township of Georgian Bay does not own the lands under Pine Valley Road, although it is deemed a municipally maintained road. At the moment, the landowner is liable for anything that occurs on the traveled road. The Georgian Bay Store is proposing to transfer Part 4 of 35R 13513 and Part 2 of 35R 13657 to the township, naming Part 4 as Pine Valley Road and Part 2 as Bonneville Road. So we have an aerial image here of the road that will be transferred over to the township. So it's highlighted in blue. This section is Part 4, which when I bring up the survey will help identify the area. And this part is Part 2. You'll notice on the survey that it references Pine Valley Road as Lone Pine Road. That is because there was never an official name change done in the past. I guess legally we weren't able to change the name because we didn't officially own the road. So part of the bylaw will include the name change to Pine Valley Road. It's been Pine Valley Road. I don't know how many years now, but historically it's been referred to as Pine Valley Road. Again, here's a location map. So these are the two subject lands. So these currently do both have roll numbers and have separate zoning. So this will officially sever these two lots. This is the survey, the first survey. So this is part 4. So this is the section that will be transferred over to the township. And then part 2 of this plan. I believe the applicant and the agent, Ashley Pulschluck, is here this morning to answer any questions that you have in regards to the lots itself. But if you have any questions in regards to the transfer, you can feel free to ask. I'm just gonna, oh, they're in here now. Perfect.
Thank you. Now, it would be fair, Ms. Amaro, for me to suggest that this is similar to some housekeeping that was overdue, that something that got missed back in the day?
That's correct. I guess when the 400 extension was completed and there was some realignment of the roads, this was just one of the roads that never got registered properly and switched over to the township.
Ms. Politchuk, anything you wish to add to the report?
Doesn't necessarily need to be added. I just happened to come across this when the landowner was trying to sell the property. Everything that the municipality had regarding maps, official plan, zoning did not match what was registered at the province. So as an agent, I legally wasn't able to sell something that we didn't know what we owned. So it was kind of brought to the municipality's attention, and we've just kind of been working through the process to make sure that what the landowner is trying to sell to a potential buyer is in fact what he owns. And this hopefully will clear it up and give us a clearer understanding of what the property actually looks like for him to move forward.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate you bringing it to our attention.
Thank you.
Council, any questions in regard to this matter? Councilor Jarvis.
You'll have to excuse me. I got really turned around trying to analyze all this when I was looking at it online. And the severed lands going to be, whose property are the severed lands, Sydney?
Through your worship to Councillor Jarvis. So the Georgian Bay Store Ltd will own the severed lands. We will now just own the road, which we have been maintaining, but we don't own. So we'll now own Pine Valley Road, and the two severed lands will be owned by Georgian Bay Store.
And okay, so and that road leads up to that store that's been closed for a number of years up beside the highway. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's the old GB store.
Gotcha. Okay, and then the severed lands have a strip between them. Is that Lone Pine Road? Oh, it is. Yeah. Okay, got it. Okay, I think I'm getting a handle on this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilor Bochek.
Sydney, is there any application to change the zoning? Or will the zoning of the commercial land stay the same with this severance?
Through your worship to Councillor Bochek. I think Mr. Oster would be able to confirm that, but I don't believe there's any rezoning application in place at the time. So the zoning will remain the same.
Mr. Oster.
Ms. Amaro is correct. There are no rezoning applications submitted on the properties.
And my second question.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. My second question was that just to confirm that the size of these, there's a severance being made, and is there a new lot being created, or is the two lots being separated simply because the road is going to be part of the land swap, so that this one parcel of land is going to become two parcels of land And you have no reservation on size or anything as far as minimum size for commercial properties or anything?
Mr. Austin.
Through the mayor to Councilor Bocek, this would be considered more of like a technical severance. It's not. It's essentially an effect of the township taking the road. This probably should have taken place multiple years ago, but as discussed, just in error, the registration didn't go through. So by the township taking the road, it just creates the two lots as a result of that, because there would be this strip of land in between the two lots that in itself is separately conveyable and owned by the township. And as a result of that, there's then the two parcels on either side of the road.
Right. So there is the creation of two lots instead of one lots, and that one or both lots could be sold independently or separately. So in essence, we are creating a new lot.
In essence, correct. As a result of taking the road, it does result in two parcels being created, but the zoning's already applied to them. So there's no planning concerns with the application to essentially for the township to take the road, as the lots are created as a result of municipal works by taking the lands to accommodate the road. There would be no concerns there.
Sorry, I can speak to this. I don't know if I can share my screen, but the images that we're showing are slightly confusing, and I do have clearer images if it will help.
Can we allow Ms. Bullock to share her screen? Ms. Way is working on it.
Thank you. Okay, so as of right now, this is what I came up with to demonstrate the issue. So this on the right-hand side of the screen is actually your Georgian Bay, your municipal mapping. And as you can see, this property, according to your municipal mapping, is already very clear and defined, which is the upper left portion. This is the roll number that's currently being paid by my client for taxes. However, and the lines don't line up on this, in the lower portion, you can see this is what's showing on the title and province. So you can see that it was a matter of this portion that was severed off before was not actually completed. So this is already zoned commercial. This is already zoned residential according to all of your mapping, but this was never actually registered on title. And if you go to the next one, you can see again, there's a smaller portion. And according to the taxes and the municipality, your mapping, you've already merged the two residential portions with this being closed. And this upper portion is actually a different property. So these now, according to your mapping, zoning, official plan, everything, this has already been zoned and corrected and merged with the bottom portion, but the title does not show that. The title shows it as one and then two. So this is why we need to complete this, because when I go and pull title at the land registry office, this is what the property is showing. However, excuse me, anybody who were to come into the office to do any due diligence, to do any planning, would have a completely different map on what they actually purchased. And this is how, and if you notice here, your portions have already severed. This is the portion in the official plan that is done. And then here is your road allowance that's been completed. The original presentation that Sydney showed actually showed the wrong property. She showed this portion that was C3. This is 39. This was already severed. And this is the one that had the old store on it. This was already severed and sold back in June. That's already done. The portion that we're dealing with is this area here. It's just the lines don't seem to line up very well on the mapping, as opposed to Geo Warehouse, which is what the registry uses, just doesn't seem to match up. So this is what we're trying to complete here. And this, although it's confusing on the zoning, you guys have already done all of the steps. You've already applied the zoning. You've already applied the official plan. It was just this portion was not ever completed on title registry.
Thank you very much for the clarity. That helps considerably. It answers some of the questions I had. I do have one more question I'll ask for Mr. Oster. There's currently on the lower, I guess you could call it the southeast lot, there is a dwelling, a residential dwelling on that property. It it's dilapidated, condemned, whatever you want to call it. So this lot that is zoned residential could effectively be sold off as a residential building lot. Am I correct in that, Brad?
Through the mayor to Councilor Bocek, the lands on the south side of what is presently Lone Pine Road are all zoned rural. But the rural zone does permit a single detached dwelling as a use on the land. So in effect, yes, those lands could be sold and one single detached dwelling could be built.
And that leads me back to my original thought of creating a new lot, which this township is not in favor of and never has been. But I think everything here has been explained and I understand it and I understand the legal part of it. So I'm okay. But I think maybe everyone else on council has maybe got a better understanding of what we're dealing with here through this question process. Thank you.
Don't count on it.
I do have more maps if anybody needs anything else. I just know that according to the municipality and your planning, this has already been done. There is essentially the address that he's paying taxes on. According to all of the municipal stuff, there's no new lot being created. It will carry on as is. This is just legal on title for the province that was never completed. So according to the municipality, no new lots on your level are actually created. You're just carrying on with status quo. It's just finalizing it on title from something that was done ages ago. And there is a pending agreement of purchase and sale on the residential portion. And that's actually how this came to be. So we already thought this was done. You already had this as done, but the province just doesn't show it. So we couldn't actually transfer title should he sell it.
I think it's very fortunate that you did that title search.
We try to be thorough.
Wow. And it's good that if we need some housekeeping, we got the housekeeping done. Council, any other questions on this matter? What I have in front of me is moved by Councillor Jarvis, second by Councillor Wienko. Be it resolved that council accept the transfer of part of lot 28, concession 4, Baxter, being part 2 on 35R-13657 and part 4 on 35R-13513, and dedicate the lands as public highway in the township of Georgian Bay by adopting bylaw 2021-064. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much. And Ms. Polichuk, thank you very much for your input.
Thank you.
Okay. We're getting there. Moved by Councillor Bocek, second by Councillor Jarvis. Be it resolved that council adopts a bylaw. Let me get the right number here so I don't mess it all up. 2021-065 to confirm the proceedings of the September 15th, 2021 Planning Council meeting.
064.
Is it 4?
Yes.
I thought so. That's what I used in the last resolution.
No.
Oh, we had 63 back for the fish habitat, and then 64 was for this transfer. So I would think that 65 would be for
Sorry. Yes.
Okay. Be it resolved, the council adopts bylaw 2021-065 to confirm the proceedings of the September 15th, 2021 Planning Council meeting. All those in favor? And that is carried. And now be it resolved, the Planning Council does now adjourn at 12:04 p.m. until Wednesday, October 13th, 2021 at 9 a.m. or at the call of the chair. All those in favor? Council Jarvis, is that a question or in favor?
Yeah, Wednesday, or are we meeting on a Tuesday in October?
I think it's after Thanksgiving, hence our meetings are moved to Tuesday and Wednesday.
Right, great thing. Okay.
Somebody's paying attention. All those in favor? Okay, so we're now adjourned, and we will be back at 1 o'clock for our committee of the whole meeting. Enjoy your lunch. Thank you, everybody.